Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisbee's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbeesrestaurant.com. At Natal's Air Conditioning, our motto is service honoring the golden rule. We're dedicated to providing the best air conditioning solution for your home or business in the New Orleans metro area. More information is available at 504-821-0005. Natal's Air Conditioning, a proud sponsor of the St. Jude Dream Home. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.
Good evening, New Orleans, and happy Thanksgiving, and welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Over the next hour, we're going to discuss the New Orleans Saints, the Tulane Green Wave, the LSU Tigers, and the New Orleans Pelicans. I'm your host, Eric Asher, and hope you and your family and friends have had a wonderful Thanksgiving dinner. And if you're just sitting down for dinner, hey, don't turn us off, because we're going to have a great panel for you tonight and a great discussion about the Holmes teams. And joining us on the program tonight from ESPN 100.3, Scott Alexander, and also Juan Kincaid of Channel 4 WWL TV. And guys, thanks so much for coming down and being part of the show this evening. Happy Thanksgiving to both of you guys. We always like to start the show off, kind of letting folks know a little bit about where they can find you on the dial, a little bit about what you're involved in. And Scotty, we'll start with you.
Well, Eric, it's great to be back. I had 5 visits in the first 8 months, and I haven't been here in a while because I have the new show at ESPN Radio. I started back in June. Hence, I haven't been able to come because it's from 3 to 6, and I know your show's at 6 every night. But, yeah, I've been doing that since June, like I said, and we got deep into it with the training camp with the Saints, and now that the Pelican season started, I'm just fired up. And also doing the Cox 4 and CST Game of the Week for football. The high school playoffs obviously started a couple weeks ago, and now we have a third-round game tomorrow. It's going to be Newman against Catholic of New Iberia, so I'm looking forward to that game.
It's going to be a good game. Juan, again, welcome back to you as well, and tell us a little bit about what's happening over at Channel 4.
I'm exhausted just listening to his schedule, but it's busy time, you know, for everybody. It's high school football season playoffs start up again tomorrow. You have some semifinals and some quarterfinals, and we're deep into that with Fourth Down Friday, and then on Sunday, of course, Fourth Down on 4, dealing with the Saints and LSU and Tulane and the Pelicans. It's a busy time of the year, but this is the best time of the year, I think, for sports in Louisiana, because you usually have all 4 teams, professional and college teams, that are doing well, and your high school teams are bringing up the rear and playing well as well.
Plus, you get a little bit of an overlap between basketball and football, which is always good, especially down here now with a pro team and hopefully some ascending college programs as well.
Let's hope so.
Yeah, let's hope so, no doubt. Let's get started. Saints, I can't even believe I'm saying this. Saints are 4-7. They lose on Monday night to Baltimore, 34-27. 3 losses in a row at home, which is almost unheard of. And the team has been out physical, honestly, especially over the last 3 games. San Francisco, Cincinnati, Baltimore, Pittsburgh coming up. I don't think anybody could have foreseen this. Scott, I'll start with you first. The state of the New Orleans Saints right now.
Where do you start, Eric? Honestly, I have to eat crow because you and I were texting after the Carolina game when they were 4-4. I thought that was going to put them back on track. You know, they had the great win against Green Bay on Sunday night. They followed it up with just 4 nights later, they got the game against Carolina, and then you're coming home. Granted, you're playing some really good teams. I mean, the last 4 dome opponents for the Saints are 28-14, 29-14-1. So it's not like you're playing chump change, but the fact is, you know, these teams aren't like the cream of the crop in the NFL. Yeah, maybe the Packers are, but the rest of them are between, like I'd say, 8-15 in the league, and you've proven yourself you're not one of those teams.
Yeah, I think the problem is the Saints are just not a very good team this year, and we haven't had to say that over the last 6, 7, 8 years with Drew Brees and Sean Payton at the helm. They're just not very good in so many different aspects, and it begins with the defense. We thought, and we were all fooled at training camp thinking, oh, this team looks fantastic, but we failed to realize they're playing against their offense. They know their plays. Yes. We pumped up the defense, and they haven't at all been like we thought they would be. No. We were given fool's gold basically last year because we thought you add Jairus Byrd to the mix, it's going to be a better defensive unit going forward, and it just hasn't been that way. And offensively speaking, I think they've gotten old. I really do. I mean, Brandon Cooks was the nice little spark plug thrown in there. Now that he's injured, missing Monday night's game, you're going back to the old guard, and they just don't get it done as well as they used to. The one thing that stood out after the game is Sean Payton and Drew Brees both said our margin for error is not what it used to be, and that's basically it. It's not. They can't outscore teams at 40 points a game and give up 35 anymore. They have to score 50 points, it seems like, and still give up 35 and win a football game.
Yeah, guys, I mentioned this on my radio show. I've mentioned it now on the television show now 2 weeks in a row, and everybody wants to point to lack of leadership on this team. And I'm sure there's no doubt when you lose the type of players that you lost with the time that they've had within the program, understanding the Payton way, that's going to hurt you, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But a lot of those players were done. They're not playing in the league anymore. You look at Harper, you look at Jenkins. Obviously, they're playing on other teams, but I think looking back now that maybe the players, especially on the defensive side of the ball, overachieved last year. You got Payton coming in, you got all that energy from Payton coming in from again, the suspension. Payton, in some cases, had never laid eyes on some of these guys on the field before. This was the first time, and it's almost that scenario of when we were back in school. Substitute teacher's no longer in the building. Yeah. Now the teacher comes back. I got to up my game, and maybe those guys upped their game to the point last year that they played a little bit above their heads. This year, maybe they read those press clippings in the offseason and felt like they maybe could just roll the ball out there and they were going to be the Saints of the previous season, and it just hasn't happened. Juan, I'll take you first. Your thoughts on that? Is that palatable at this point? Because this is not the same defense that we saw last year. And I'm talking specifically the front seven.
Well, I think that, listen, when you have such a good year last year and all the expectations are put on you to be even better, when you go out and make moves, again, bringing Jairus Byrd in, you give Junior Gillette that new contract, the expectation is there that they're going to ascend and be even better. Last year, they didn't have the bullseye on their back. Nobody knew about this defense. It's a bunch of no-name guys making their way through the NFL, trying to earn that contract in first and second year. Now they're coming back with a high expectation on their back, and they don't live up to it. Listen, one of the things that got me from Monday night's game against the Ravens, as bad as that defense played, the defensive front four was nowhere to be found. In the locker room after the game, the defensive front four, Junior Gillette, the names are escaping me. Akeem Hicks and Cam Jordan. Right. Junior Gillette, all those guys were gone by the time we got into the locker room. Accountability. Yeah. They're not holding up their end of the bargain, and we're hearing that there's a bit of strife in the locker room. Some of the veteran guys, like a Curtis Lofton, is getting in guys' faces and saying, look, how do you want to finish this season? Do you want to be a part of this? You shouldn't have to do that with this football team, but that's what's happening because some guys aren't pulling their weight.
Yeah, a little bit of immaturity for sure when it comes to some of the young players on this team. Scotty, what's your take on that?
Well, it speaks volumes what you said about accountability. I was in the Braves locker rooms throughout the World Series, and as you know, they only won one of those 5, and I was in there for 4 of them. And one of the things I remember, a young Chipper Jones, before he grew up, never came out. Whenever they lost a game, he was never there. Brian Jordan never there. The leaders were the pitchers. Yeah. Those guys were always held accountable, and even John Rocker. And I'm seeing the same thing. I haven't been in the locker room nearly as much as you, but this is interesting. When you were answering your first question, I wanted to bring this up to you because you and I talk about it every day, and I'm at every game, but this dude's in the locker room after every game. He's at every practice, talking at press conferences. Is the leadership that big a deal as everybody's saying? Because, listen, like he said, most of these guys are at the end of their careers, and it probably was the best business decision regardless. But when you're talking Jabari Greers, guys that demand respect in that locker room, everybody wants to bring up Jenkins and Harper, of course, and we all know the other guys, Will Smith and Vilma. You're left with a good roster that look great on paper, according to Archie Manning, but you see it. How important is that leadership?
Well, I think it depends on which player you're talking about. Darren Sproles, they didn't think he had anything left in the tank, and look what he's doing for his new team. Malcolm Jenkins didn't think he had much left in the tank, look what he's doing for his new team. Roman Harper, not having a great year with Carolina, but he's still serviceable. But you take away what they do physically on the football field. Look at what they did in the locker room. Roman Harper had been here like 8-9 years. Yeah. You've got guys like Devery Henderson. He's now 2 years removed from the team. He's gone. Lance Moore's gone. I mean, it's not just on the defensive side of the ball.
Right.
You're missing pieces, offense and defense, guys that you can't just replace by throwing another body in there. And I think it's really showing. I just think this football team, again, it comes back down to a simple thing. They're not a very good football team this year. And what's happening is that we're all being sucked in to believe this team can make the playoffs because the NFC South is so bad. So we're having this false hope going forward. Everyone's bad in the division. It's just who's going to be the worst?
Right.
Who's going to be the best of the worst?
Best of the worst, right. It's true.
It just sounds icky even having to talk about playoffs, honestly.
Yeah.
It's just an uncomfortable thing because it's there. You have to talk about it.
Do you want to see this team? If they could be 6-10 going into the playoffs. Do you want to see that? And I know fans want to see it.
4 and 5, I did.
Well,
4 and 6, I was like, at 4 and 7, I'm just like, wow, this is really uncomfortable to even like talk playoffs because they just, like you said, are not a very good football team. And I didn't say that after the San Francisco game. I thought the Lions to San Francisco was a pretty good run, even though they were only 2-2. But, man, these last 2 weeks are a different story.
Well, but here's the thing. Think about it. Seattle, a few years back, 7-9 team goes to the playoffs, and they wreak havoc.
But they were ascending.
They were ascending, exactly.
Right.
So
you got 5 weeks. It's a fickle league.
We'll see.
It's a fickle league, and you have weaker opponents.
You get one win.
This opponent stretch is very weak. Would you love to have the Dallas Cowboys schedule? Listen, they aren't a good football team. I'm saying that, but the Dallas Cowboys have had a pretty nice little run to get their little 8-3 record. The Saints, they're playing all playoff teams. Listen, they aren't good, but they have a good chance to finish 8-8 with the schedule they have.
Well, not if this defense continues to resemble the 2012 defense. That's the biggest problem. And I'll go back to the fan base. I'll tell you right now, I talk to fans all the time, and one of the things season ticket holders tell me right now is, I don't know if I want them to back into the playoffs here.
Yeah.
Do I really want to put up that money for the season as a season ticket holder for a playoff game that they may go one and done in? So there's that thought process out there. But guys, that is unimaginable in this town. Are you kidding me? Season ticket holders talking about maybe not wanting the Saints to make the playoffs at home, so they don't have to shell out money for a game.
I don't believe that, Eric.
Yeah.
I believe that Saints fans will be Saints fans. If this team makes the playoffs, they'll be there in the Superdome cheering them on because they'll think, okay, if Seattle did it a couple years ago, maybe we can do it too. It depends on how they're playing going into the playoffs to make that point. If they're playing well, then you're thinking, okay, this team is starting to light fire again, and maybe they can get that rhythm going. But if they back into the playoffs because Atlanta lost and they lost to Tampa, but they still got in because, whatever the scenario may be besides winning, then you're thinking, okay, and maybe it's still going to be a full dome because it's playoff football.
Oh, absolutely.
And it all starts over then.
Right. Now, guys.
This is a week-to-week league, Eric. I mean,
it is. It's true.
I'm telling you, 2 weeks of wins will just change a lot of people's thought process.
It'll change maybe the fans' view on it, but I don't know if it changes the inner problems, the internal
no
problems on this
You're
team.
absolutely right. It's just because the schedule's light after Pittsburgh.
Honestly, look, it's going to be difficult with a patchwork secondary at this point, bringing guys off the street to play for you in the secondary. You could throw out all the injuries at this point because, whether it's Jarvis Byrd, whether it was taking a chance on Champ Bailey, obviously they thought they had more back there than they did. And that was probably the biggest, and I guess the first sin and maybe the largest sin they did in the offseason was, especially after seeing last year what happened when Jabari Greer went out, not making sure that they were dedicated to get someone to play that opposite corner, Keenan Lewis, from Keenan Lewis. And now you look at it, it's been an Achilles heel all year long. But I think, Juan, you mentioned it when we were coming in. A lot of the problem is the inability to rush the passer. And that's the biggest question mark that I think a lot of us had from last year to this year. Yeah. It's pure effort at this point. It's beating the guy across from you. These guys are not doing it.
You give Junior Gillette, now let me preface this by saying, I said when it happened, that's the end of Junior. You give Junior Gillette a big contract, all that money up front, basically to a guy that he lived off of being a hungry player, trying to get that big piece of the pie. And all of a sudden you give him that big piece of the pie. What's he playing for now? The next one? Wait, may not see the next contract. Eric, this backroom staff, Mickey Loomis, and I've never said this before, Mickey Loomis, his assistant Kyrie, they failed this team in the offseason. They didn't, as you said, they didn't address the cornerback situation. When you knew Jabari Greer wasn't coming back, Champ Bailey, you didn't know what you were getting out of him, if anything. They failed this football team in the secondary because they didn't have a backup plan. They didn't go out and get somebody, and that I'm not used to saying Mickey Loomis failed because he's one of the best football money minds in the NFL, bar none.
Well, I have to comment on this because everybody old timers remember where they were when Kennedy died. I was assassinated. I wasn't alive yet. I remember where I was 9/11. I remember where I was when Katrina hit in Atlanta, even when JFK Jr. died. I also remember where I was when Junior Galette's contract was announced on the radio because I would happen to be a part of Pat Dye Jr.'s staff. I was an agent for 8 years, and we signed Charles Grant, a similar type player, to the largest contract in NFL history for a non-Pro Bowl player. And I've known Charles since he was a high school player at Miller County. I said, he is done. I said, right when he gets this money, he's done. And I thought Junior Galette might have had a little more drive, but I was right there with you. I said, wow, couldn't we have waited a little bit for this? Because it's still a big deal. It's not like he's going to get a whole lot more on the market.
And I like Junior. He's a really good guy.
Sure. I do too, a lot.
He's a really good guy.
And this is no slight on him at all. I agree with your point. But Akeem Hicks is the one I thought was going to take that next step. I swore to people. I said, in 2 years, he's a Pro Bowl player. And no slight against him either. But you know how I mark the plays during the game. I'm religiously marking so I can go back to my show and go back to I don't mark his name or Cam Jordan hardly ever in a game.
Well, they've underachieved as a group. I mean, you go right down the line. That was one of the things that I think, whether it's the media or the fan base, when you look back at this team, you look at it from last year to this year, you could bank on the saying, look, the great teams, they start up front. And if you get a great defensive line, and you can hold on that great defensive line, especially knowing how the NFL is, you got them kind of on the cheap right now, you're going to be in good shape. Galette obviously has not lived up to his contract. Cam Jordan has lost a lot of money this season. Again, looking for big money.
But maybe that's a good thing, though. That might be a good thing for this team going forward. Maybe a lot of these players need to lose some money. You know, the potential money that they would make, like an Akeem Hicks.
Sure,
I agree with you. I thought Akeem was going to go higher than Cam Jordan before Cam went.
What happened?
You read your press clippings. When people say you're great, and all you say you're great, next thing you know, I'm great. You ain't got to go out there and put the work in. And not saying you guys don't work hard, but they're not performing the way they did last year.
And it's a different young player, and we know this now, especially those of us in the media now are finding this out more than anything else. This is a young player now that is involved in social media. They're on Twitter. They're on Facebook. They're constantly updating their status. They're listening. You know, Peyton talks about the noise. With older players, maybe they turned the radio off or didn't watch TV or never picked up a newspaper during the season. These young players now are involved in social media. They're listening. They're listening to the good things that are being said about them, the bad things that are saying about them, and I think it affects them. They need to put more emphasis on what's going on with the playbook and less emphasis on what's happening on their smartphone.
Yeah. Well, Sean Payton said it on Monday night. He said, you know what? The noise is going to be there. When you play like this season, the noise is going to be there. How do you handle it? And this is the first time this group of players, the Akeem Hickses, the Cam Jordans, have had to handle this kind of noise. So we'll see how they handle it. It's going to be interesting going forward. You're going to find out which players are on board with what's going on and which players need to be shipped out of here at the end of the season.
Well, I hope they weren't listening to me today because, as you say, sometimes I'm even nauseously optimistic. But, today if they were listening, they didn't like what they heard because I just had to say what I felt.
Because you can't sugarcoat what's going on right now. You know, especially because, look, you saw what they were last year, so you know it's in them. The question is, why is this coaching staff not getting that out of them this season? And that's a huge question. On the defensive side, it was an emerging group that had some youth to it. Obviously, they need some veteran leadership. They need somebody to grab them by the collar and get them rolling. On the offensive side, you got the same kind of problem you had on defense a couple seasons ago. You got an aging offensive line now, and you got a lot of money tied up in that offensive line. And I think that's going to be one of the things we have to watch in the offseason. All of a sudden, Jari Evans, Ben Grubbs, Jonathan Goodwin, even Zach Strief, not the players that they once were. They're descending, maybe not as quick of foot. They were playing very, very well in the run game, but in the pass game, you could see the quickness of defensive ends, defensive tackles, at times overwhelming them. In this last 3-game stretch, playing against some of the physical teams in the NFL, the inability to be able to run the football when the other team knows you're running the football, they got some problems on the offensive line. People want to drop everything on Drew Brees, and I've probably been his harshest critic in the market, but you got to put some onus on this offensive line as well. Scotty, your thoughts?
Well, I want to ask him: Is it? We talked about the guards and how they've underachieved. They're both Pro Bowls from last year. That's a little bit questionable. But is it just the guards, or is it the tackles as well? Is it the push seems to be coming in the middle? But are you noticing you're down there more often? Are you getting it from the outsides as well?
Well, I think they're getting it all over. Yeah. I think the one guy's name we haven't called very much is Teron Armstead. He's still a young player, and I thought he's playing pretty well.
And he gets a little bit of a pass no matter what because of the amount of time he's been on the field.
Yeah, but I think he does. But at the same time, I think he's earned the notoriety he's gotten so far. I think he's played pretty well considering this offensive line. It's not what it used to to be, which is a team that loved to pass the ball.
Right.
They would pass protect as well as anybody in the league.
Yes.
They're now a better run protecting team, which I find very, very odd.
Until they get up against a physical stretch
Right,
like they just did.
Well, you know what? But here's the thing, Eric. I blame part of that on Sean Payton as much as I do the offensive line, because you have to put your players in the best position to win. Case in point, the 4th and goal at the 1 yard line against Baltimore, he tries to run to the teeth of the Baltimore defense. You know that's where their strong point is. They've showed you the entire drive, even though the Saints went down the field, they showed you the entire drive. This is what you're not going to do.
Yes.
So you call a timeout, and then you come back and a play calls to dive over the top of the middle of the defense. It's not going to happen. That's more coaching than it is players. You know where you are outmanned, so go to your strengths. Get the guys on the outside, and Sean Payton didn't do that. So while we can sit there and complain about the defense or the offensive line not doing their job, on some situations, it's all about the coaching and the play calling that you put out there. You got to put, again, any coach, no matter what the level is, your job is to put your players in the best position to win a football game, and Sean Payton didn't do that Monday night.
Scott, what can you add?
Well, 520 yards, that's what I have to laugh at when you look at that. That's the most misleading 520 yards you'll ever see. I mean, yeah, they did get drives, and they're always good at the end of a half or at the end of the game. They got the cheap touchdown, but I look at 420 yards passing. I'm like, wow, where'd that come from? They got a couple of bombs, but around the league, if you own Drew Brees or you own Jimmy Graham, you're doing well in a fantasy team, but it just doesn't work in an NFL game.
The lifeblood of any franchise is the ability to be able to draft well.
Yeah.
We've seen at times this team has drafted well. At times, again, they've been able to, even when they don't draft well, hit on undrafted free agents, which kind of made up for maybe missing on some of those draft choices. You look at this draft, honestly, it's deplorable. Brandon Cooks is the only player that has really done anything. You look at Stanley Jean-Baptiste, how a second-round pick can't get on the field. Kyrie Fort couldn't even stay with the team. Again, they took a chance on injured players in Fort, Sinceri, and Powell. Powell's been a special teams guy. Sinceri's a special teams guy. You were hoping maybe with the injury before the broken forearm that he would have maybe had a chance to play safety. And Rooks is basically on your practice squad. The question is, going forward, you can't continue to have drafts like this, especially when you're very, very top heavy on your salary cap and expect to continue to win. Scott?
No chance. I mean, no chance. It is a lifeblood, just like recruiting's a lifeblood for a college team. You can't win without great players. They've done a great job. We can't overlook the fact in the undrafted free agent market. They've done well. Their running backs all seem to be that. But the second round pick is the one right now because everybody seems to want that Richard Sherman type. He's tall, he's lean, but he just played wide receiver 2 years ago. I mean, this guy's converted. When you pick a second rounder, you expect a little play out of him.
An impact.
Impact, at least starting
Especially
by the second year. So I just am mystified that I'm even throwing him out there. It reminds me of Brandon Harris' situation at LSU. He's talented. There must be something else going on if he can't even get on the field with what's going on at LSU's quarterback position. I feel the same way about Stanley Jean-Baptiste because why else wouldn't you give him a shot? I mean, every other quarterback, when they see number 29, they're looking to the other side of the field automatically to see who's guarding.
I think they were kind of hoping that Baptiste would be the new Mo Claiborne. Right. And we'll see Mo Claiborne can't even get on the field in Dallas anymore. Mo Claiborne came to LSU as a wide receiver. First practice, he called a ball and they're like, you're going to cornerback. He didn't want to do it, but he did it. Right. And next thing you know, he's a first-round draft pick. Did stick. Jean-Baptiste, the kid, again, played wide receiver most of his time in college. Played most of the time in college, and all of a sudden you're trying to bring a receiver in here to play cornerback on the professional level. I didn't like the pick when they did it, but I will say this: they did it because. And they're thinking, I'm thinking behind that was bring him into training camp. He can be our number 2 or number 3 cornerback. Right. We can coach him up. That's why they maybe went after Champ Bailey. Right. Didn't work out. So you're thinking you can fall back on Jean-Baptiste. It didn't happen. Again, Mickey Loomis and those guys failed this football team when it came to getting personnel on the football field and having a backup plan. They didn't do it this year, and it's come back to bite them.
Well, when Brian Dixon, again, undrafted free agent, can get more playing time than your second-round pick, that's a problem.
That's a
look,
red flag.
In today's NFL, I'm sorry, first, second, third-round picks, you've got to hit on those.
On the field,
Those have to get on the field and get on the field and make an impact immediately for you.
Especially since you hadn't had a second rounder in 3 years.
Well, and
you didn't have 2 of them because of Bounty
And you
Gate.
lost Jabari Greer, and you knew what that void was going to do for your defense if you didn't have someone that could fill in there. And you knew what Corey White was, you knew what Patrick Robinson was, and then again, you're basically getting a project guy that you can bring along in a couple years. No time for that.
Well, I want to ask him that because this is what I was going to ask him anyway. I'm glad you brought those two guys up. What are Corey White and Patrick Robinson?
Well, Patrick Robinson, you didn't know because he was coming off the knee injury. That's what you didn't know. Well, I tell people all the time, everyone's complaining about this secondary when the guys were healthy. Think about it. Patrick Robinson, Jarris Byrd, Champ Bailey, 3 guys that were expected to either be starters in your secondary or significant minutes. Those 3 guys may have been on the field in training camp a week together total.
Total.
So you're not going to have that continuity. You're basically starting off the season with a brand new secondary.
Yes.
It just wasn't going to happen as quickly as people wanted to. But again, you have to have a backup plan. This team didn't have one. I keep going towards that, and it's something we never expected from Mickey Loomis and Sean Payton to not have an idea. If, okay, plan A doesn't work, what do we do with plan B? And they didn't have one. And again, it's what this team has to deal with going forward here into next year. One thing I'm always confident, though, offensive line, they find those guys anywhere. That's the least of my concern. But you may have to find more next year because you've got an aging offensive line.
Yeah.
Maybe one more year you're getting out. Jonathan Goodwin's probably out.
Yes, I agree with
he's
that.
gone. But you've got to back up there. So they've got to start addressing that next season, but not bringing guys in to start right away.
Well, I don't know if they could get rid of everybody at one time because of the dead money. I mean, again, they got a lot of money wrapped up in these 2 guards, and you may see one go and another one stay. I don't know who that is at this point because both of them are not playing well. Going back to the defense for a moment, you mentioned the secondary. Maybe the one of the biggest question marks now that we have in this second season for Kenny Vaccaro is who is Kenny Vaccaro? I mean, he is a guy that last year was the sure tackler. You could put him in a joker position. You could play a slot receiver. You knew he was in great in run support. You could move him around. Now he's kind of playing that strong safety position. I can't tell you how many times he's been out of position. Can't tell you how many times he's missed tackles. He's just not the same guy. He's got some Saints fans wishing that maybe it was Eric Reed that was in that defensive backfield now instead of Kenny Vaccaro.
I think what's happened to Vaccaro, and he's still a good player, is he's getting asked to do too much now. I mean, he's in the secondary now where you don't recognize pretty much anyone.
No.
The guy next to him, he's on his 5th safety next to him. And I just think any player in that position, especially a young player now in year 2, they'd be having the same struggles. They're asking him to do a lot of things. And I think he's out of position a lot of times because he's trying to do too much. He's trying to make that big play. He's trying to make up for guys that you lost, like the Roman Harper, like the Malcolm Jenkins. He had veteran guys around him last year, so he was able to shine. And again, he was an unknown last year. We knew him in college, but no one expected to get out of Kenny Vaccaro what we got last year, so he's a bit of an unknown. This year, again, like the team defense, we expected him to take a step forward, a step up in his play, and it hasn't happened. But there's so many reasons why, with injuries being the number one reason.
Kenny Vaccaro reminds me of that freshman in high school that hung out with all the seniors, the cool guy, and all of a sudden those seniors graduate, and it's like he lost all of his big brothers.
Yeah.
And he is very frustrated right now. He is lost, and when the team's losing, you see the locker rooms that I have been in, I've been in about 3 of them this year after games, that is the single most frustrated guy. I mean, you look at him and he's just shell-shocked because he came in the league, hey man, we are good. This is all working out well. Came from a winning organization in Texas. We're bringing that same thing here, and I think he's at a loss for words. I still think long-term he's your best player on your defense, but I think we're losing a little of that steam.
A lot of criticism of Drew Brees this year, and rightly so.
Yeah,
I mean, Drew Brees, bad decisions. Has to understand where the Saints are in terms of his career right now. And, although, again, I would not blame the interception on Monday, the pick 6 on Monday on him, because that, to me, is on the offensive line. You look at Jonathan Goodwin, he whiffed. Suggs has got his arm wrapped around him, and Brees, quite frankly, couldn't get the ball to Jimmy Graham. But you throw that one out and you look at the rest of the season, he's been kind of the catalyst for this team. Once there's a turnover, this team is hard to overcome it. Talk about Drew Brees, where he is in his career. And look, I know he's an optimistic guy. I want to be optimistic for him, but if they don't get a real solid offensive line around him, he will continue to struggle going forward, in my opinion.
I really thought that Brees would have a really good season this year, not necessarily throwing 5,000 yards, but because he had a running game for the first time, a consistent running game for the first time since he's been in New Orleans, and they could lean more on that. In fact, I remember the players talking in training camp saying, you know what, this is the first time in training camp in 5-6 years where we've really focused more on running the ball. Zach Strief is like, this is great. We're actually putting an emphasis on it. And I thought at that point, this offense is going to be okay. They don't have the big-time receivers like they have in the years past, guys that can make huge plays all over the field, but they have a running game that can give them 30 carries a game, take a less pressure off Drew Brees. They have to throw up 45, 50 times a game, and they'll be okay. But I think Brees has brought a lot of the problems on himself, trying to force too many passes, always trying to make a play when the best play is to tuck it, throw it away, eat it, whatever the case may be, and he hasn't chosen that route. And boy, I know Saints fans sure wish he would say, you know what, I'm going to take a little hit to my ego right now, hold on to this ball, play for the next down.
play for the next.
Well, he has in recent weeks now. He's
And
run
recently,
a little bit more.
but it's what he did early on, Eric. That put this team behind the 8 ball.
it's
The
true.
pick sixes.
Oh.
I mean, Detroit. I mean, the pick sixes.
It crushed him.
You
Just
can't
Picks
do
in
that.
general, right?
Yeah.
And he's the first one to tell you can't do
it's
it.
true.
But a guy that old in the league, Scott, he knows what to and what not to do. I mean,
Well, that's the first thing you were talking. That's the first thing I thought of. It's one thing to be the gunslinger at 28, 29. 35, you can't think you're going to force the ball.
he's turning into Favre without the arm.
Right.
Without the arm, exactly.
Yeah.
You put it on the head. He is still the single most indispensable player on this team, without question. He's out. You're not going to win another game. At least you have hope with him.
Sure.
That's the thing. You still have hope anytime Drew Brees behind center. But, man, he is still a 6-foot guy that doesn't weigh a whole lot. He's getting beat up, man. Beat up. And that's going to – it's one thing at 28. You might be able to take a little better. He's 35. I don't care how much core exercise you do. That's going to take a toll.
Yep.
Running game has been the best it's been probably in the Peyton era for the Saints at this point. Mark Ingram has been the bell count. My guess is Mark Ingram's not with this team next year. I just don't think that they're going to spend the money. They got too many other areas they have to shore up, and they believe running backs, they could pull them off the scrap heap and put them in the offense. Juan, your thoughts? Is Ingram here next year for the New Orleans Saints, or is he playing somewhere else?
I think Kyrie Robinson has basically told the Saints all they need to know is that Ingram's dispensable. We can let him go. We're not going to pay him the money. And I think the days of paying running backs big money contracts are over.
I agree.
Because you can pull any guy off the street, undrafted, Kyrie Robinson, Pierre Thomas. I mean, their best running backs have been
Chris
guys that
Ivory.
guys they haven't had to draft,
Right.
guys that have fallen in their lap. That's where the scouting department comes in amazement. They found running backs, they found offensive linemen, and guys that have come in here and been the best this franchise has ever seen. I don't think Mark Ingram's back next year because he's going to want too much money, and I'm not sure how much any team will pay him next year.
Yeah, it's not a position you're going to pay anymore at all. We said this. I sat here with Larry Holder. I remember saying this about Sproles and Thomas when Larry thought I was nuts when I even suggested Sproles might be going. He goes, he's safe. And that's nothing against Larry. I'm like, it's economics, man.
Absolutely.
It's economics. He's making 4.5, and that's what Mark Ingram's going to try to get. You're going to get Kyrie for less than $1 million, around that figure. It's all economics, and when you have to pay Peter to Rob Paul, or Rob Paul to pay Peter, which is what they're doing with Drew Brees with $20 million, $10 million to Graham, $10 million to Gillette, $9 million to Bird, you're going to have to take hits around this way.
Speaking of economics, one of the mind-boggling things after watching on Monday night was the performance of Joe Morgan. Look, it seems like every time he's on the field, he makes a big play.
Right.
And you got to wonder, you got to question Peyton here. What was going on that you couldn't get this guy on the field? For years you had Meacham and you had Henderson as decoys. Sometimes they'd catch the long pass, sometimes they get the reverse, but at the end of the day, you had to respect that speed. He makes 2 plays on Monday night, big time plays that kind of change the complexion of the game, and you don't see him again. What's the deal with Joe Morgan?
Listen, when he made the end around, I'm like, okay, that could be a fluke play. They might have saw something in the defense. But then when he went deep, I'm like, he still has the breakaway speed. And we all were sitting there. We looked at each other. Why is this guy in? Okay, this is a good sign. Maybe, they have that deep threat again. As good as Cooks is, he wasn't the deep threat yet because he's not on the same page with Brees. This guy had the reps. He didn't have all the skins on the wall, but every time he seems to come in, 2012? Was that the year he came in? Yeah, he averaged 38 yards a catch. I have no idea. I expected to see him down the line in this game, and we didn't see him again.
Well, I'll say part of the reason why he wasn't on the field early on because he was injured. I mean, he didn't.
Still lingering? That injury was
dealing with the
lingering?
knee injury in training camp. I mean, there was very rarely a day where he wasn't. He would run a route, catch a ball, come up hobbling a little bit. He was just working his way back. So, I mean, now, granted, halfway through the season, there were some disciplinary issues going on between he and Sean Payton.
Right.
Sean Payton basically set him down and said, okay, get your stuff together. But beyond Joe Morgan, Nick Toon finally got on the field on Monday, didn't catch a ball. I mean, you've got some dead weight in the receiving core. You got to make some decisions on.
Yep.
Robert Meacham, Nick Toon, who can't get on the field here in year number 3. Joe Morgan. I mean, what are you going to do with these guys? I mean, how many more chances are you going to give them? It's time to start bringing in some fresh meat at wide receiver as well because Marcus Colston is not going to outrun anybody. He's not getting any younger. Brandon Cooks. I think Brandon Cooks can end up being this team's deep threat.
Yep.
I think they're getting a better understanding between he and Brees, but it's going to take a little bit of time. But Morgan needs to start seeing the field. Why not?
Yeah, I would agree. Well, guys, I got a minute before I have to go to break. Saints take on Pittsburgh on Sunday. Scotty, your thoughts?
Well, since they're not expected to win, this is only the second game all year that they're not going to be favored in. Is that crazy? Detroit Lions is the only game they've been an underdog in, and they're a 4-point dog this week. So expect them to win. That said, I don't feel we're confident. I'm the most optimistic guy. I'm the one that keeps saying it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay. I still think they win the division. I mean, if you look at the simulations, 49% for them, 33% for the Falcons. They got to start somewhere. I'm not sure if it's this week.
I'll ask you about Pittsburgh. Follow up, do they win the division?
Cleveland, Cincinnati, Baltimore, Pittsburgh. The NFC North is what it is. They all look the same. They all play the same kind of football. It's smash mouth up front. And I think the Saints go on the road and get a win in Pittsburgh because no one expects them to. And they were favored. They were picked to lose in Detroit, and they should have won that game. They were winning it until late. I think they get it right in Pittsburgh. I don't know why.
Yeah.
That's why bettors make money. I'm telling you, every time Pittsburgh's been a favorite, I've gone the other way and the opposite.
Do they make the playoffs?
Saints make the playoffs? No, because I think it comes down to the last game of the season in Tampa Bay, and the Saints need to win it to make it, and they lose.
I think
that's just what they do.
I think they lose on Sunday at Pittsburgh, and I don't think they make the playoffs simply because the defense is just not performing. We take a break. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports on this Thanksgiving night. Again, thanks for joining us. Scott Alexander of ESPN 100.3 and Juan Kincaid of Channel 4 Sports, our guest. My name is Eric Asher. Don't go anywhere.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisbee's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbeesrestaurant.com. At Natal's Air Conditioning, our motto is service honoring the golden rule. We're dedicated to providing the best air conditioning solution for your home or business in the New Orleans metro area. More information is available at 504-821-0005. Natal's Air Conditioning, a proud sponsor of the St. Jude Dream Home. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile. You're watching WLAE, New Orleans Public Television. Find us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Each and every Thursday night with a live broadcast right here on WLAE at 6 o'clock. On Friday nights, 10 o'clock here on WLAE for our rebroadcast. And each and every Friday night on Pelican Sports Television at 9 p.m. You can catch us in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette. This is not a live show tonight on this Thanksgiving night. Happy Thanksgiving to you and to your loved ones. Hope you're sticking around and enjoying the program. Got a great panel for you tonight. Juan Kincaid of Channel 4 Sports and Scott Alexander of ESPN 100.3. Guys, speaking of LSU getting ready to kick off against Texas A&M. Look at the game against Arkansas. They're now 7-4. They get shut out by Arkansas, which, again, a lot of people were just kind of mind-boggling until you saw what they did to Ole Miss last week.
Right.
A lot of people blaming that Alabama hangover. You know, I blame a couple things. First of all, it's hard to hide the deficiency at quarterback. It's caught up to them, especially when you lose players like Alexander and Porter on the offensive line. It made them one-dimensional. They couldn't run the football. The question is, will they be able to turn this around against Texas A&M?
Great question. I mean, I wish I knew the answer to that one. Normally, I'd say 100% yes. I don't know if this malaise continues. I mean, we're going to know in about 3 hours what the final score is, but they're favored by a touchdown at a tough place to play. Some say Kyle Field, which I've been a dozen times. Kyle Field is a rabid place. I'm not sure all the students will be there since it is Thanksgiving. This will tell me a lot about the character of this team, honestly. I expected a little bit of a down game against Arkansas. I didn't expect to be shut out. I'm curious. I'm curious myself. Normally, I'm pretty all over where I think is going to happen. This game, I have no idea.
LSU always struggles at Arkansas. Right. I mean, traditionally, they don't play well there. I've been there many times where they've had the lead late and they've lost it.
And it means something to Arkansas, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, look, they hadn't won a game in a season and a half in the SEC. I mean, they had been struggling, and so LSU, they were primed to beat LSU up there because I don't think anybody ever saw it coming. I just don't think it's, again, like the Saints, not a very good LSU football team, but I don't blame all the players all the time. Look, you've lost so many juniors to the NFL over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
It's hard to replace that. I don't care how many 5-star players you bring in as freshmen, they are freshmen. And so they're not going to play up to the level of teams like Mississippi State and Ole Miss who have the seniors, the Alabamas who have juniors and seniors still playing. It's just a hard thing to achieve. And I hear people say it all the time, get rid of Les Miles. Who are you going to bring into that program that's going to win you an average of 9 games per year, which he has done since he's been there?
Right. You know, guys, in my opinion, every single position group on this team has gotten better throughout the season. You know, the offensive line was looked as to be the carry this team. Early they struggled. Defensive line, early they struggled. All of a sudden they make the changes. Godshaw was playing more. Beck was playing more. Jamal Adams playing more on the defensive side of the ball. You look at all those position groups, they got better. The only position group that has not gotten better is the quarterback position. And Scott, I'll start with you first. It doesn't look like Anthony Jennings is an SEC-type quarterback, but yet Brandon Harris can't get on the field. We're hearing a lot of the problem is can't digest the playbook. But here's the big problem. You bring in guys who are used to playing a pistol or a spread offense, and you try to put them in a pro-style offense where they're going to turn around and hand the ball off where they're expected to throw from the pocket. It's like putting that square peg in a round hole, and again, it's come back to bite Les Miles and this staff this season. Your thoughts on the quarterback position? Will Brandon Harris see some time? What's the future of Anthony Jennings on this team?
Anthony Jennings is not going to be starting next season. Listen, I think he's a fine player. He's a great teammate. He's a guy to have in your team. He's not a starting quarterback in the SEC. And I like Anthony Jennings. Brandon Harris, there's a lot of disconnect going on right now. I know a lot of the people inside there that's saying he is completely disengaged right now. He took it personally when he didn't win the starting position. And I understand. He knows he's the better guy. But he wasn't the right guy at that time, and it was a tough spot. It's like when Mettenberger had that first SEC start. He had a couple starts before that, before he had to go at Auburn. Going at Auburn, who was number 3 at the time, as your first start, that is a rabid place at night, man. It's crazy there, as you know. It was tough, and now I think they're going to have to re-recruit him to stay at LSU. I mean, I really do, and that's unfortunate because he's sitting on a gold mine. These guys that had that 1 year are going to be very good. They just need the quarterback. And I'm going to give you a stat in wrapping this up. Did you see what happened on Sunday with the LSU guys that were rookies? Mettenberger, 345, 2 touches. Obviously, Odell Beckham, everybody's talking about 145, 2 touches was the greatest catch of all time. Landry, 2 touchdowns. Hill, a touchdown, 100 yards. Alfred Blue coming in for 65 yards.
A lot of talent.
It's a lot of talent lost. I mean, I don't know what you fully expected, but it was going to be a tough season. I think the 17-0 game is what drove it home. I think if you take that out of the equation, I think LSU fans would be like, okay, we kind of expected 3 losses. I think the way that 4th loss happened is effective.
I thought they'd lose 5 games this year. I really did. I just thought that you've lost too much talent over the last 2 years to try to replenish, and look at what's coming back here. I mean, you've got some good talented freshman players. Yes. But again, the SEC football is no joke. You got a lot of teams with veteran experience. But I'm going to throw this out at you, and I've been saying this over and over. Jordan Jefferson, pocket thrower. I saw him throw 80 yards in the Superdome. They tried to turn him into an option quarterback. They bring in Mettenberger. They put him in a pro-style offense, which fits his ability and his skill set, and he excels. You go out and recruit 2 guys that are get-out-of-the-pocket throwers. And all you talked about after the spring game is we're going to get these guys out of the pocket, get them on the run, let them throw, do a little option, and you haven't done that. This is as much Les Miles' fault as anybody.
Yes.
Again, it's like pro football, college football, high school. You have to put your players in the best position to be successful. And with the quarterback position, they haven't done that. I mean, I feel bad for Anthony Jennings. You're asking the guy to stand in the pocket who's about 6 feet tall to throw over these big linemen and be successful when his only real option to throw the ball to has been Traven Durrell. You said you think all positions have kind of gotten better. I think the wide receiver position has fallen back because they haven't gotten the ball out to Malachi Dupree. They haven't gotten the ball out to anybody else besides Traven Durrell. That's his safety blanket. He doesn't look at anybody else. I think they have talented receivers, but they've been underutilized this year.
Oh, I agree with that. That's for sure.
Did you see Brandon Harris's footage in high school? Did you catch some clips?
I've seen some of it.
He's never been under center.
Right.
And that's all he's played. He's in the pistol.
I know.
I mean, this is like asking a guy to play a whole different position in basketball.
He'd be better set at A&M.
Right.
I mean, you look at why guys like Speedy Knoll went to A&M. LSU's going to have a problem going forward. They're recruiting a guy, the junior college quarterback. He's a get out of the pocket quarterback. Guys are going to start looking at LSU and saying, why am I going to go there? They're not going to play toward my strengths. They want me to sit in the pocket. The best quarterbacks are not going to come to LSU. We wonder why this team can recruit any player in the country, but they can't get a quarterback.
If I'm another coach that's a recruiting coordinator or any coach
That's the first thing you say.
he's just like, dude, are you kidding me? How many examples do I need to give you? It's going to hurt in recruiting.
No, it will, and it'll hurt the skill positions where, again, they've done very, very well in recruiting guys at the wide receiver position. I mean, they've got some great young wide receivers on this team that one day could be really, really, really great players in the SEC. But right now, how do you know? As you mentioned, he is a one read and got to either get rid of the football or run. And it's unfortunate the way that they've been handled. Do they win at Texas A&M? And is this enough to pacify the fan base, which is, at this point, if they got to go to the Texas Bowl or to the Liberty Bowl, I don't know if LSU travels to those bowls.
If it was 1995, they would. It's different. These 13 years of prosperity have changed things. It's unfortunate. I mean, Bama fans, it's championship or bust. LSU fans, it's BCS or bust, or whatever it is now. They're not going to travel. I mean, I hate to say that. I mean, there's not many good selections that you can get with 4 losses, much less 5. Do they win? If you ask me, put the gun in my head, I'll say they win by a field goal or lose by a field goal. I really don't know. I think it's going to be low scoring, and I just think it's going to be ugly. LSU's offense is not good. Texas A&M's defense is not good. Who knows?
I think A&M outscores them. I don't think LSU can keep up on the scoreboard. I think it's close, but I think A&M may win by 10 points. As far as the bowl game, I think if they're playing in Shreveport or if they're playing in Memphis, LSU fans will go because they always love an excuse to be able to travel with the football team. I don't think it'll be sold out, but I think LSU fans will go because you're talking about late December, early January for a bowl game. You know, we're all from work. Let's go to the football game. It's within driving distance for most people, within 2 hours. Why wouldn't they go to that?
Do they go to El Paso, though? Places like that.
Yeah, no,
that's different. I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I don't think so either.
Let's shift gears and talk a little bit about the Pelicans. 7-5 right now, but that's still only good enough for 5th in the Southwest, which might be the toughest division outside the SEC West and the NFL when you look at how stacked that is. 2-2 on their West Coast swing, and I guess we start with Anthony Davis. What a stat stuffer this guy has been. You got to love how he is progressing. You got to love how he's taking a leadership role on this team. Scott, your thoughts on Anthony Davis and his meteoric rise since coming to the Pelicans?
He's dedicated himself to the game. I mean, the great ones want to get better, and that's the key to him. I mean, listen, he could have rested on laurels. He could have been a good center. He could have even been one of the best. He wants to be the greatest of all time. Will he get there? Who knows? I mean, he's going to be one of the greats. I really believe that. Gained 20 pounds in each of the off seasons. He's added that. But his offensive game and confidence, I think that Europe trip completely helped him. He knew he was the man for once on an all-star type team, and that has come over, and his attitude's gotten better. I mean, listen, I love the basketball. You know I'm at every single game. I follow it closely. I rewatch the games a lot. The confidence on this guy is different. And I'm going to throw this. You talked about the game on Saturday, career high 43. If you heard my show, you know what the stat's going to be, but he's the first player in NBA history to do this, and we're going to have a lot of these with Anthony Davis. 43 points has never been done on only 23 field goals and 12 free throws. Now, that's a crazy stat, but this is the history of the league. Right. It's only happened twice before. Karl Malone did it once, and Alex English did it once. I went back to I'm a research nut. I went back and dug, found that, and he's the only one in history that's ever done those things with 14 rebounds. So special things up. He's blocked shots, and he alters even more than he blocks. This guy's his upside's limitless.
The thing that gets me is the steals. I mean, steals, when you're talking second in the league right now in steals, come on, that's a guard's game.
He's got a guard's hands.
Well, he was a point guard for a long time. I think the greatest compliment Anthony Davis gets right now is from fellow players like LeBron James, who said this kid is going to be one of the best to ever play the game. I mean, those are guys that are playing the game at the highest level, and they're complimenting him on what he could be doing 5-10 years down the line. But what I find funny is that Anthony Davis has yet to be named the Player of the Week in the NBA. And when asked about that on Tuesday, he said, "You know what? It doesn't matter to me. I'm all about getting wins."
Right.
That right there. He is the team's next version of Chris Paul.
Yes. Yeah.
In terms of how he thinks about basketball. Right. It's not about the money, not about getting all the accolades. It's about winning basketball games. And I hope under this new ownership and Tom Benson that they recognize what they have here and continue to build this basketball team, because if they don't, Chris Paul, he'll be doing a Chris Paul within 3 years.
My biggest fear.
Well, I agree. Look, it'll be the same way. He'll take that second deal. Yeah. But after he gets into a year in that second deal, he'll try to force his way out.
I'm not so sure he'll take that second deal, Eric. It depends on how this team is doing on the record.
That would be unprecedented now. Because most guys are going to take the second deal because you can make the maximum amount of money with your team, the team you're with.
But I don't think it's about making max money with him, Eric. I think it's about winning championships with him. I think he wants to win.
I mean, he's going to make the money. Shows last year what you just said, and the rebuttal was what you said.
Right.
It's been unprecedented. But I said I think this guy's more of a long-term guy.
Yeah.
I think you have to get this done by year 4.
Certain players have a different makeup.
Yeah.
They're made different. They're not wired the same. Chris Paul, LeBron James, they're going to make their money. But they know they're going to make max money someplace. But they're about winning championships. Michael Jordan's about winning. I mean, Michael Jordan, when he came into the league, he was one of the lowest paid players for the longest time in the league because he was all about winning championships and getting players around him. You know, I think Anthony Davis is wired the same way.
This is a team that is still trying to find itself. You know, I think we all agree on the rule: 20 to 25 games in a season to try to see how this team's going to mesh. We find out now Eric Gordon injured in the West Coast trip, torn labrum, same exact injury that Drew Brees had. You know, had to get the staples in the shoulder. More than likely, he's done for the season. Again, you have to look even beyond that because of the rehab on that. He has a player option next year for $15 million. There'll be interesting to see, first of all, if they can get some type of an injury exception for this season to get some money back on the cap, and then what happens next season going forward. But he was starting to play well. Look, as Scotty and I were talking before the show, you got to throw the salary out. That's already paid in full. Finally, he was starting to be able to realize he was not the man and was going to be part of this team. When I look at this team, some people might not believe this. They might not believe I'm saying it, but that's a loss.
It's a huge loss.
Absolutely.
That is a loss. He is a guy that can score 20 points a game. He can create his own shot. And again, even though he's not a great defender, he's been a willing defender. I think this hurts more than maybe Pelican fans really realize at this point. And especially when you look at the bench now, it is clearly weaker than it was.
I'm going to pose this to you because you covered the team more so far than I have because I've been stuck in football. From what I've been hearing, that Eric Gordon was disgruntled with how his role was evolving with the basketball team right now. I've always said this team will be a better team if he comes off the bench with Ryan Anderson because you strengthen your bench a little bit, which is probably the weak spot of this basketball team. So having said that, I think they're going to be hurt more on the bench than him being in the starting lineup because you've got the points that they can cover up his point losses. But on the bench, you're now putting more emphasis on Ryan Anderson having to give you 15, 20 points a night.
Well, you know, Austin Rivers steps up to 25 to 30 minutes as opposed to 20 to 22, and a lot of it will depend on how he plays. Right. Then you got to keep the next guy, Jimmer Fredette. How's he going to play? But let me say the one thing about Eric that I noticed: he was disgruntled about the uncertainty of what his deal was. He wasn't sure what Tyreek's going to do, and it was kind of awkward watching those guys because they're all guys used to put the ball in the hand. Drew, they've all been the guy, and. But then you saw the last week and a half. I mean, I watched the late games. You know, he was really buying in. And I got to say, the other thing I saw, if anybody's played basketball, you got different kind of personality. That was a fiery guy. I was passionate. I was kind of like Ravis Vasquez in a sense. And people all mistook. They have a mental block because of the $14.8 million, but they mistook his lack of fire on the court for not caring. And one guy I can tell you, Anthony Mora, who I've known since he was a freshman in high school, he said, dude, let me tell you this. Eric cares as much as all of us. And this is completely off the record. He said, I don't care if you use it or not. Tell the people that we like him and he cares. And I'm going to tell you, I saw a happier Eric Gordon this year. Maybe not on the floor, but in the locker room, a guy that's more engaged with the media, a guy that, and I was just like, and it came at the wrong time because I think the city of New Orleans was waiting for another reason to pounce on the guy, and he was coming out of it.
Well, it's a trade that hasn't worked.
No.
You know, unfortunately.
They should have never matched
for whatever reason, and mainly because of the injuries. He's never been able to stay healthy.
Right.
I could see them doing the amnesty with him after this season and just cutting ties because, I mean, $15 million is a lot to give a guy who you don't know how he's going to come back from this injury. If he's out for the entire year, how's he going to respond to rehab? This is the first offseason he's had. He didn't have any rehab. Right. And we asked him about it before the season started. He's like, you know what? I didn't know how to handle it coming back because I've been able to just play basketball all summer long. But now he's back in the same situation again. I'm sure he's extremely frustrated. But
where this team, where this team will be better, I mean, where this team will be hurt is you got a lot of scores, you got one ball, but everybody's not on every night. And there will be a night where you were going to need Eric Gordon's points, and he's not going to be there. Who's going to pick up that slack going forward? And that's going to be one of the keys. Guys, Omer Asik has played well for this team when he's been on the court, has a little bit of a back injury. He's a guy that they can ill afford to lose going forward.
More as important or more important? I mean, he takes the pressure off Anthony Davis big time. I'm in love with Omer Asik's Ashik, whatever you want to call him, his game. Because the little things that aren't in the box score, he gets the rebound sometimes, he does. And it's the dirty work. He'll alter shots. He gets boards. He's going to, stick that extra body out to the defender, has a tougher time getting, or the offensive guy has a tougher time getting the hole. I'm surprised they split those games on the road with him. I really am. I was like, and I was more impressed that they won 2 back-to-backs after losing the first one on the road. That's tough. But I want to give him props because, dude, media day. You were the one up front. All of us gather around. The first 2 out were Dell and Monty, and he pressed them both. I got to give you credit. He pressed until they gave him the glare. He said, listen, is it playoffs or bust here? And they both stepped off of that. You remember? They're like, hey, it's tough in the West.
Is it?
It drives me crazy.
Right.
I think it is.
Oh, I do too.
Listen,
there's only one saving grace, but go ahead.
Last year you were snake bitten by all the injuries.
Yes.
Ryan Anderson going down early, losing Drew Holiday, all the pieces you brought in here and thought that they would just assemble right away. It didn't happen. I think it's going to take some time because you're still dealing with a brand new basketball team for the most part. But there is no excuse. I don't care how tough the Western Conference is. There's no excuse for not making the playoffs this year unless everyone, knock on wood, just gets totally knocked out because of injury. Anthony Davis, Omer Ashik, Drew Holiday, former All-Star. Tyreek Evans, Ryan Anderson. You can tell me with that roster that your top 8 players, you can tell me with 8 good players like that, you can't make a playoff run in the Western Conference. I don't care how strong and deep this Western Conference is. With that roster and those players and a half-decent bench, you should be no lower than a 6th seed, in my opinion. The West ain't what it used to be.
No, but I'll tell you this. Going back to the saving grace for Monty Williams, the fact that he has a great relationship with Anthony Davis may be the one thing that keeps him around here.
Well, but you know what? You say that, you think back when Chris Paul was here.
I know.
And he had a great relationship with his head coach, who's now with the Lakers.
Right.
And it didn't do anything for him.
Right.
I think it's about the players around him, less about the coach.
Right. Scotty, what can you add before we move to Tulane with the remaining time?
I picked them to be 6. That's funny you use that number. I'm a little worried with the Gordon injury. I got to be real with you. That's a key player out.
It hurts.
If he could be Reggie Bush, it's going to hurt. He could be the decoy guy because even if he's not scoring, he has the threat to score.
Yeah, people have to throw $15 million out and just look at what the player was at this point and what he could have been. And unfortunately, again, and I can't believe I'm saying this because I've been the one that's saying you should have never matched the deal and they needed to get rid of him and trade him. But he was in this position that he was in now, he could have helped.
If he made $7 million a year, the city of New Orleans would be loving him right now. They'd be loving him.
Pelicans didn't have a backup plan.
Right. Well, again, we'll see. Still got some time to the trading deadline. They're still guard heavy, no matter that they've lost Gordon. Quickly, we've only got a few minutes left. Tulane 3-8. Not the season they thought it would be, but they got some great young talent on this team. I think you got to be enthusiastic if you're a Tulane fan. The biggest question is, how quickly will Tanner Lee mature?
I'm not sure Tanner Lee's the answer for this team. And listen, I'm probably going to take a lot of flack for this. I'm not as high on the Catholic League as everyone else in this town is. I think there's one good team, and that being Rummel. I think they're a good team, not a great team. I think Jesuit, Brother Martin, Shaw, I think all those teams are just average football teams with average football players. I think your best football is being played in the river parishes and on the North Shore. Having said that, Tanner Lee's coming into a situation where he's having to learn on the go. And the good thing that Curtis Johnson's done is said, you know what? I don't care how many picks you throw. You're staying in the game. You have to figure it out. Going forward here, him, Collette from Mandeville, who's going to be your guy to go to next year? It's going to be interesting to see. But right now, Tanner Lee is who they have faith in, who they believe is the best guy to give them a chance to win a football game. I thought they'd be 3-8 this year. I think they win more than that because, I think it's a more difficult conference going into.
Right.
Thought it'd be 5-6 at this point. I really did. I thought that Tulsa win set them back after having a huge lead early on, and the schedule got tougher and tougher. You got teams that have been in the top 25, a lot of them. Georgia Tech and Dukes and all these teams. As far as Tulane, they're on the right path. They're a better team than they were last year. They're just in a tougher conference. I'm not making excuses. I love Curtis Johnson. Right. I've made no bones about that. I love the man. He's great. I just think this is a tough learning year.
Tulane and LSU are identical for the first time ever in this. Both teams have really good running games.
Yes.
Both teams have decent receiving core. Defense, not too bad. Decent defenses. They're young, but they're getting better. And both teams struggling at quarterback position. They couldn't be more identical than ever.
Yep, definitely agree. Juan Kincaid of Channel 4 Sports, Scott Alexander of ESPN 100.3. Thanks so much for being on our panel tonight.
Great to be here.
Happy Thanksgiving to each and every one of you. Thanks so much for watching. Remember, there is a rebroadcast of this show each and every Friday night at 10 p.m. right here on WLAE TV, and also at 9 p.m., a brand new time on Pelican Sports Television each and every Friday night in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette. You can catch me on the radio weekdays, 9:90 a.m., WGSO, 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. And if you missed any of the previous episodes of this program, Inside New Orleans Sports, you want to catch my podcast or listen live to my radio show, you can do that at ericasher.com. Again, special thanks to our guests, Juan Kincaid and Scott Alexander. Also to the WLAE production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Donovan Joseph, Kenny Juneau, and my director, William Hill. Good night, everyone. Thanks so much for watching Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We'll see you right back here next Thursday night. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving weekend. Good evening.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisbee's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbeesrestaurant.com. At Natal's Air Conditioning, our motto is service honoring the golden rule. We're dedicated to providing the best air conditioning solution for your home or business in the New Orleans metro area. More information is available at 504-821-0005. Natal's Air Conditioning, a proud sponsor of the St. Jude Dream Home. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.